Okay, you're good to go now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reza. Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Stanton, not Staunton. And it's good to have such a good crowd here today. Appreciate it. And your guest host today, Lisa, have some personal issues that you won't be joining us today. So you're stuck with me. We're going to start today's meeting by a roll call, and I'm not sure who is calling.
I'm happy to.
Okay.
Is Mukunda online? Tom?
Here.
Ann?
Here.
Jennifer?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
Cord?
Here.
Lisa's absent. Art?
Here.
Emma? Lisa's absent. Sherry? Lauren?
Here.
Carol?
Here.
Roberto? See you there, Roberto. Thank you. Melanie? I believe we have a quorum.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Our first action, and actually the only vote of the day today, is the approval of the minutes of our last meeting. Oh yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. We have to, Roberta, we have to come back to you for a second so you can let us know your reason for being remote.
I am way over the 60-mile limit in some family caretaking responsibilities, so that's my excuse and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So we'll move forward with the looking at the approval of the minutes of our last meeting, and then can I have a motion to approve those minutes? Does anyone have any changes to those minutes first before we do that? Any changes to the minutes that are in your packet?
I move we approve.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Do we need to do an official roll call on that or just do it? Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Executive Director. We're going to move on to the chair's report, which will be the vice chair's report today. And this is actually, it's a real pleasure to do this part of the meeting. One of the really sweet things that Lisa has put in for us as a board is going through and doing two things. One is doing a specific staff introduction, so we get to learn more about the roles of individuals within the organization. And the second is a deep dive. So we're going to start today by meeting Joel Clifton. And Joel, as some of you know, has been around working with us in the building and grounds area, and is also our VITA guru. So for those people who are stuck with state computers, he's the guy that's helping us through all the trials and tribulations there. So Joel, welcome, and we look forward to hearing about you.
Yes. Good morning, everybody of the board. Like I said, my name's Joel Clifton. I've been here since 2005, so that's 18 years. Main role is buildings and grounds, which takes care of all the facilities from mowing grass to just painting and moving exhibits and taking care of that. I started out working in exhibits, and now I'm strictly with they're all over the building. But the other hats I wear, as you have related to, is the AIDER, which is the agency IT resource person. I'm the voice between the agency and VITA. I take care of the strategic plan for the IT section of the agency. Keep abreast of all the incoming technologies and try to keep everybody abreast of that. The other hat I also wear is the ISO, which is the information security officer. I have to take care of the security policies, working with Joe on all of that. It's a headache on that end.
I bet. So not an inconsiderable amount of change that you've seen since you've been on board.
Started out, like I said, we had our own, information wise, IT wise, we had our own servers. Eventually VITA took, it's all outsourced to other companies. They moved to taking over all that. They started taking servers away. The prices went up, so we done away with a lot of the servers. Ended up going to a virtual server long before the idea of going cloud. So when Northrop Grumman was done away with and we went to the MSI, which is a multi-service integrator, the governor wanted everything to go cloud. We were already there. The only thing is they just had to change the technologies to where it was a private cloud for the state. So we were easily transformed to that. And other than that, we're going right along with the changes, which changes about every month.
Change to zeros. Yeah. Lots of activity starting to move over Douglas Avenue as well, right, Joel?
Yes, we got a new roof put on it, and we just had contractors come in yesterday looking over the building, trying to get abreast of redoing a lot of the infrastructure and try to get it up and running so we can use that on a daily basis.
Great. Anybody have any questions for Joel this morning? Well, we really appreciate you coming in on a Saturday morning and addressing us, and we really appreciate all you do. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Your service.
Nice job, Joel.
Thank you.
Feel free to stick around for the board meeting if you like, or you can leave anytime you want.
Okay, thank you.
You're not on the hook anymore. Great, thanks again, Joel. We're this morning's deep dive participant is with us in the house, and most everyone knows here Ben Williams. So Ben, step right up, and we're looking forward to hearing from you about collections and acquisitions.
Absolutely. Thank you all very much. I was asked to speak a little bit about how we get specimens and how those specimens make it into our collections. So try to give you the, keep it fairly brief since I know we got a lot on the agenda. Basically, there are a number of ways that we obtain specimens. The most obvious way is that our curators are out in the field. They are obviously out collecting items that are relevant to their own areas of interest. Cal is perhaps out getting ants. Ariana might be getting salamander tissue samples. These are things that they know right off the bat. This is something I'm researching, something that's worth adding to our holdings. And of course, we also have research associates who also have a very keen understanding of what kind of items are going to be of value to the museum. And they will frequently donate items to us. Dr. Evans has donated many an item to us over the years. Now we've also got orphan collections that make it to the VMNH. So a great recent example of this is the Danville Science Center decided to change up their business model, get rid of their natural history collections, and they gave us right first refusal on those. And that was a very sizable, very old collection called the Evelyn Womack collection. Her son David Womack had reached out to me about if that was something we'd be interested in. That was a really good situation because we did not have to take the entire collection. We were actually able to go to the Danville Science Center and see what they had, look at various spreadsheets they compiled, and pick the things that were most relevant to us. So we made a couple of trips out, got some really good material, and then the rest of that material could be donated to other institutions. Of course, unfortunately, we also get collections or specimens sometimes when a researcher or a private collector has passed away and left their specimens to us, or the family reaches out to us. A really good example of this from the last couple of years is the Dr. William R. Shealy collection, which some of you are probably familiar with, especially if you come to our last Bug Fest. This is an incredible collection. It's probably at least 20 drawers, maybe more than that, of very beautiful tropical insects, things like morpho butterflies with reflective blue wings, things that are really appealing to the public, but also have associated scientific data. And speaking of that, that leads to another way in which we sometimes get specimens is when members of the public come into the museum. Sometimes, a lot of times we have people who have items they just want identified. So that's a service we provide. But we will also have people come in and say, for example, my grandfather collected these arrowheads his entire life. I have a box of them here. Would you guys be interested in taking this on? And that is something we do sometimes, but unfortunately, a lot of the time, these are not items that have any data with. We might know who collected them, we don't know when, we don't know where, anything like that. So sometimes you might contact Christy and see if education has any use for these items, something that folks can actually hold, put their hands on, and look at more closely, and don't necessarily need the data to go with them. But a lot of times we just can't take these items because they really don't have any research value, unfortunately. Dr. Cal Ivanov is fond of saying that a label without a specimen is of more value than a specimen without a label. If you have a loose beetle rattling around in the drool, you may know the species, but not too much about it. But if you still have the tag and that beetle is gone, you know who collected it, where they collected it, and what. So that is some of the ways that specimens make their way to us. As far as how those specimens make it into our collections, if someone donates an item to us, we have a deed of gift form. This is a form, we have them fill out. We fill out half of it. Each party gets a form and just some paperwork to know, paper trail to know this was an item they decided to donate to us. Once that has been done, the items or the specimens go to the curator who will ultimately be responsible for them. Once the curator has decided, yes, this is something we do want to add to our collections, we do want to be accessioned, they will fill out a RIN, that is a record of incoming material form. And those forms go to our registrar, Jill Harris. Every quarter, Jill will compile a table, a great big list of everything we've received that quarter. And that goes out to our collections committee. So over email, the collections committee will look at these items and vote yes or no, do we want to add all of these items to our collections. These items then go to the executive director who makes the same decision. Should we add these items to our collections? And then finally, at the quarterly research and collections committee meeting, in the packet that I distribute, there's the table of everything acquired over the last quarter, and the members of the committee sign off on. So that's a pretty Byzantine series of events to get specimens into our collections. But I think the important message and the reason it's worth exploring that is really just to underscore the fact that there are multiple layers of vetting at every step of the way to make sure that these are items we should have. These are items that will advance the mission of the Virginia Museum of Natural History. So I would be happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Thank you very much.
Do you have the total on the number of, I know 10 million is the number that comes up with that kind of.
Yeah, I'd say maybe 10 million plus 1,000, couple thousand. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly, but it is well over 10 million.
Is there a process, or you all ever asked to put a financial amount on a donation so that we often will see, for example, folks who want a tax write-off and that sort of thing. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, that is something I have actually not had experience with. Usually, that if that were to happen, that'll probably be something we could bring in our registrar, Jill Harris.
Basically, she would counsel them. She can give them paths to follow, but we are not allowed to say put value on it. And the other thing that you can do, I don't know if you do this or not, but if you donate, like I remember donating insect stuff, and I could like from a personal collection, you could take off X number of cents per step or something like that.
Yes, I assume that it's not just insects, but it's $5,000 is the max. Anything over that, then you need to hire someone to do a professional valuation. Yeah, but it is up to the donor, not the museum, to come up with a value for specimens.
I will say that we've had, especially during the pandemic, we had a number of people approach us with archaeology collections and things like that, wanting an appraisal. Tell them, come to the wrong place, Fred. Good luck.
We always say they're priceless.
Yeah.
There you go.
You're right. Keep them on back pocket.
Any other questions for this one? Well, you're the central part of this operation and the charter of the organization as a whole. So research and collections is a super important part of our business. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. So the next order of business, can I leave?
Yeah. So just to make sure everyone, I know some of you had dinner with folks last night and everything, but we have some representation from our foundation board today. So I think all of you already know Len Poulin, who's been very active in the Waynesboro project. In fact, that's how we all met, right? On the other end, we have Bill Kirby, who's foundation board member, an attorney, lives in Martinsville. In fact, Bill, you live right up the road from me. So yeah, if you dropped a bowling ball on Cherokee Trail, it would end up in my driveway. So anyway, and then in between them is Mr. Len Dorn, who's a friend of the museum. He's a career fundraiser and has agreed to pitch in to help us. And I'm not going to say a lot about you, Len, because he has a slot in the agenda about halfway down. So we'll get to hear more from him about his background. And part of the reason we've invited him here today is that he's a former board member of Frontier Culture Museum.
Oh, cool.
Radio sucks.
Yeah.
Yes.
These were a president from my business partner who said, if you go back to work one more time, before retirement.
And we have to invite Mukunda. She's joined us.
Okay, so
She's the lower right.
Hi, I'm Mukunda. We have you down for attending remotely now, but we do need a reason for you to participate remotely. So if you'd be able to share that with us, please.
I hope she's not doing this.
Oh, my gosh.
She might be in the middle of a procedure.
yeah.
Oh, no, I'm right here.
Okay.
Good.
Oh, I'm working. I'm actually not that far from you. I'm at a hospital in Harrisonburg. So I'm at Centera Harrisonburg on call today.
Well, thank you for joining.
Thank you for joining.
No problem.
Great. The next order of business today is nominating committee. Melanie is not with us, so a couple of just points here that we've got some things pending in the first quarter of next year where we're going to be looking at a slate of new officers that will be nominated in February and then voted on by the board in May. So that's really the next big things coming up in that committee's work. So I don't think there was anything else on that committee. Okay, great. Okay, we can move on. Board is going to provide us with the treasurer's report.
It's going to be the quickest treasurer report we've ever had in the first quarter. If you look at item 4 for the balance sheet, we're in line with everything through the first quarter, so we're doing really good there. And I am actually going to talk about a little bit. Let's see here. I'm still a little Joe's thunder for the advancement report for our admissions of retail through the first quarter of this year. We are higher than any other time we've been since 2008. Cool. So the numbers are showing real good there. So that is my report. Just want to put that one out there.
There's a lot of information on here. Does anybody have any questions or comments to board or the committee treasurer? That's it. Okay. Is there any more to that?
I'd just like to point out, just in case somebody kind of catches this, you'll notice in the under the revenue line items, footnote number 4, the restricted gifts, it's only at 6% through the first quarter, and we'll talk more about this in probably a couple of the other reports coming up, but we're going to begin to transfer monies over from the foundation to the museum side for a couple of projects, including the pavilion, CHML, and others. And so that is anticipated to catch up. That's just a tiny thing.
It's hard to notice when you already have 92% of
Yeah,
your
exactly.
First 90% is easy. It's the last 10.
That's good to know.
All right, so with no further questions there, we're going to move on to the brand new part of the presentation today, and that's Cindy Marquez, our representative from the OAG, is here today with us. And we're glad to have you here, Cindy, to tell us all how we should be appropriately behaving and understanding all the aspects of our role in and how that fits into the FOIA.
Are we gonna be able to pull up the?
Yes, Mary's Ellis.
Right.
Just one moment and I'll have it up shortly.
And Cindy, you said this is your final.
Yeah.
Yes, I wish I'd known y'all needed an attorney a long time ago. I'm actually
Thanks, Mary Jo.
30 years with the Commonwealth this month, and so November 30th was my last day, but I will make sure y'all are gonna be taken care of. So yeah, there's no excuse for, I shouldn't say that, but I'm just appalled, and y'all are fabulous for, and what an exciting museum. I'm definitely, when I retire, I'll have time to come back. Okay, wait. And I have already started giving a monthly amount, you know, to support. And I'm gonna increase that after this board meeting, because I'm so impressed.
Thank you.
And I do slow down to not hit bugs, just everybody. Okay, very quickly.
No.
One of the first things that y'all should do when you join a board is look at your statutory requirements. Look at what the museum is authorized to do. Look at what you are required to do. And this board it has a lot of requirements. I mean, a lot more than some of the other boards. But y'all, you know, y'all manage, y'all control, maintain, and operate the museum. You erect, care, and preserve all property of the museum. You appoint the director, of course. You prescribe the rules and the regulations. You employ planning consultants and architects to expand the museum. So again, the General Assembly assumes that you're going to be expanding. They expect you to expand. So if I were going to talk to them, I just say, hey, y'all are telling us right here to expand. So you might want to put that out to them sometime in a very nice way, of course. Okay, you now to acquire purchase. You acquire by purchase, get loan, other the land necessary, and to expand the exhibits and displays. All right, next slide, please. Okay, and you can coordinate agreements with higher education, of course, a lot of other entities, as Joe already is already aware. So, and of course, you already have a fabulous foundation. I met some of the members last night. Thank y'all so much. And into contracts and all the typical things that you're talking about that is typical of a state agency. Next page, please. The last thing that's in y'all's requirements that I think is really interesting, because you don't see this for most agencies. It actually tells you, hey, if y'all want to supplement the salary of the director with non-state funds, please, you know, it's kind of saying, please do that. And I think what they're saying, why they put this in, is to understand that these smaller museums, y'all probably aren't, you know, and Joe, I did not get any money from him. No, but I just found it very interesting, because, you know, I have 10 agencies. And this is the first time I've seen this. I'm like, oh wow. But here's the deal. I'm also the attorney for 3 other museums. And everybody's kind of looking at what is the standard, you know, what are other directors getting paid? And the reason that this is important is you have to be able to get talent. And it's not just the next director talent. If his pay is not correct, then how can the people, his fabulous talent below him, be correct? And so I just want to point that out. You do have this ability, and it's right there in the statute, which I think is phenomenal. And again, I haven't seen that, so I'm pretty impressed by that. But one thing that y'all always need to remember, even though you have a phenomenal director, and I know a lot of directors, you are phenomenal, Joe, and the buck stops with y'all. The buck stops with y'all. That's why it's important to be involved, read things, you know, really know what's going on, listen, and be involved, please. But not to the point of, you know, operation, but you know what I'm saying. You oversee. Next slide, please. All right, very quickly, we're going to go on to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. Why is it important? Everybody's watching for that, whether it's the press, the General Assembly, the public. And sadly, first time violations up $500 to $2,000. Second offense is $2,000 to $5,000. So it is important. Also, it provides negative publicity for the museum, and no one wants that. Next slide, please.
please remember, all meetings must be open to the public, even if you're gonna go into a closed session. And I've had agencies where all they were gonna do is go into a closed session, usually that's the executive committee that does it. But you have to start an open meeting where people can come. And then you do the motion, and everything else, go in closed session, but then you have to open back up into closed session, into open session. So you have to close the closed session and open back up. Now, please, everybody remember, only 2 of y'all can talk about museum business unless you're in one of these open sessions. If you're not, if you have more than 2, whether it's 3 or 4, doesn't matter, then you have created an open session, and if they have not actually noticed it, they do everything else that's required by statute, then you have violated FOIA. So you have to be careful, and a lot of people don't think about it. Now, email, obviously, please don't reply to all if that's an option. Happily, I think that Joe and his team have figured out a way to make it easier for you not to reply to all. So thank y'all for that. But be careful with that. And for example, if the vice chair or the chair or anybody else needs to talk to several people, you do it one at a time. You just call them one at a time. I know it takes some time, but at least you're not going to end up with a $500 to $2,000, fine. So please be careful about that. It's especially, and nowadays, social media. Don't forget, if you have more than the one trustee on your social media, and you get into a discussion, whether they're on at that time or not, you get into a discussion on social media, they can see all that. You can't do that. That's an open meeting. So I mean, a lot of people don't think about that. A lot of people, but that's the new thing. All right, next slide. All right. Now, does that mean that you can't attend events or that wonderful dinner last night? Thank you again, Joe. That was fabulous. Does that mean you can't attend events together? Not at all. That just means, please don't talk about museum business. And when I'm talking about museum business, I'm not talking about somebody saying, "Isn't that a great, salamander exhibit?" or "Wasn't that a great talk?" No, it's about the business of the board about what you cannot talk. Now, does that mean that if you're talking one-on-one, if I was with another agency and 2 trustees and I were talking about museum business, in this case it was Virginia Museum of Fine Arts, and another trustee came up, immediately we all switched to talking about football or baseball, or whatever, or the Greek festival. Doesn't matter. If a 3rd trustee comes up on the conversation, just switch. And if they're like, "Whoa, why'd you switch?" We don't want to violate FOIA. We don't want to get that fine, and we don't want to make the museum look bad. So that's all you need to do. Okay, next slide. All right, let's talk about electronic meetings. Now, Joe, has the board actually approved a policy to allow for the new statutory allowances?
Yeah, when the Commonwealth came out with the information, we took that and gave that to the board.
Outstanding. Some of them haven't, so I'm very impressed. So you can forget that Brad part. But the way that you can actually, as you know, be involved electronically, that means you get to vote and everything else. So you're here, is you have to have a physical quorum in one location, as we do today. And then somebody either has to have a medical issue, the family member has a medical issue for which that trustee needs to say and provide the care, or you can have a personal issue. Now, with a personal issue, you can only do it twice per year, per calendar year. So, but you can do the medicals as many times as possible. Or if you're 60 miles or over, then you can also participate electronically, and that doesn't have a requirement of 2 no more than 2 a year. Also, of course, as y'all know, there are special rules whenever the governor has declared a state of emergency. Next slide, please. Okay, now I talked about closed meetings. Whenever y'all have a situation where it's just too sensitive, a particular personnel situation, you want to talk about the directors whenever you talk about the director's performance, things like that, that should be in closed session. And those are easy, and any attorney at my office can, should be here. But if they're not, they can give you a closed session script, not a problem. But there are a lot of exceptions to open meetings. Personnel, as I said, being one of them. There's actually one that's for a few museums specifically. Anytime you're discussing specific gifts, requests, and grants from a private source, those kind of things, closed session, because you don't want that out in the public. You certainly don't want it in your minutes, because you're going to give other people ideas. They can steal your or that, you have to be careful. You don't want that. You want it in a closed session. Everybody does it. So don't feel weird about having closed sessions, please. And legal advice. If y'all ever need advice from, because I'm only going to be your attorney for 12 more days, but the attorney that's going to be taking over, that person can come into closed session and help you no matter what the situation. If you're slightly afraid of some kind of litigation, or slightly afraid of, this person slipped and fell, and y'all want to talk about it as opposed to just Joe handling it, that you do that in closed session. You never do that in open session. Next slide, please. All right, of course, there are procedures for going into closed session. And I failed to mention, because Roberto actually mentioned this, whenever y'all have an open meeting, such as the one today, you do have to notice it. And there are certain other requirements, but Joe's on top of that. That's why I didn't put it in my slides. That's not something y'all need to know. It's something Joe and his people really need to know. They do it. You have to do it at least 3 days prior. You can't boom, unless there's an emergency, then that's a different scenario. But your attorney at the Attorney General's office will help you figure all that out if it's something out of the ordinary. Otherwise, Joe and his people, they have it spot on. They know exactly what to do. That's why I did not include it into y'all's slide. But now, to go into closed session, there is a script, and you basically ask people to move into closed session, and you have to specifically indicate which statutory provision will be involved. And sometimes I had one yesterday at Virginia State University, also their attorney, where it was 3 different reasons. So, or maybe actually 4. So we listed them all. And if it could be more than one, then you list them all, and then you go into closed session. But please be very careful not to go off time. When you're in closed session and you come out of closed session, you have to certify that the only thing y'all discussed was what you said you were going to discuss under the provisions of those statutory statutory provisions. So be very, very careful about that. All right, and please don't forget that you cannot vote on anything in closed session. You have to do that in open session. So what you do, you can do a straw vote. You can do a straw vote. Now that doesn't mean that the trustees, the smoke has made my allergies go crazy, but that doesn't mean that a trustee can't change his or her mind when you come out. It just gives you a sense. The straw vote just gives you a sense of what's going to happen in open session. So please remember that. Next slide, please. All right, and I just mentioned that the straw vote and everything. Next slide, please. Okay, now the other part of FOIA are document requests. And they don't have to say, this is a Freedom of Information Act request. No. They can come up to you in Kroger and say, hey, I'd like to see the annual report for the museum. If they came up to you and said, hey, I need to see the annual report for the museum, you immediately please contact them, because we have 5 days to respond. Now, if we need more time, let's say they said, for the last 10 years, I would like to, if we have the documents, FOIA is only about documents. It's not regular information. It's only about documents. So if we have the documents, we may have to dig a little bit, and that takes some time. And so we may need more than 5 days, work days. So what happens then is we tell them that we need more than 5 work days, and we get another 7 work days. If we want to go over that, we have to go to a circuit court and request. So that's why it's important. As soon as somebody comes up to you in Kroger or wherever, let Joe know so we can get on top of it right away. and, y'all won't end up having a problem. But again, don't forget, if somebody just asks for information that's not in your document, that's not FOIA. You technically don't have to provide it. A lot of times you will, just because you want people to know about these in, but sometimes, you know, obviously you won't. But again, those have a lot of exemptions. If somebody, I want to see the personnel file of, no, you know, that's exempt. I mean, there are a lot of exemptions. We talk about all those things that were listed, you know, that were mentioned about the closed sessions. All of those documents are exempt. So, but Joe's gonna know that, or he's gonna call somebody to write me the next meeting, and make sure that everything is correct. But I tell you what, as attorneys, when somebody says we have a FOIA request, we are right on it. Right on it. And he has my cell phone number, and he'll have the next person's.
And related to that, we've only had a couple of FOIA requests in the past, none of it which were ever followed up on. There was one, for instance, where, you know, I'm asking just to make sure my memory is correct on this, but I believe in one of them, we had to ask for proof of Virginia residency. Is that true?
You always require them first, and all agencies do this. Require them first to prove that they have Virginia residency, or to prove that if they are media, that their media, whether, you know, it's print media, is coming into Virginia. You know, it's not just some website.
Yeah.
No. I'm web blah blah blah. No. So they are not authorized to get documents from Virginia.
And the second thing that I was advised on a long time ago was it was a pretty big request, and we were told by council to come up with an estimated number of hours it would take you to gather that information, figure out the hourly rate of the employees working on it, and come up with a sum total that they would have to reimburse us for. And
right.
It was something like $3,000.
Right.
I don't remember. But that was then dropped.
And it tolls that the time stops while you're in that process. And like you said, a lot of times they'll drop it, or they will greatly decrease what they want. It'll go from wanting 10,000 pages to wanting 2, you know, or something like that. Like, we don't want to pay $3,000. Yes, and they will have to pay if they want that kind of material. But halfway, it sounds like y'all don't have those issues very often. Okay, yeah, I already mentioned all of this, so next slide, please. Oh, and I do want to mention something else. Document, be careful, because even documents on a napkin. I mean, you know, a napkin, a video, social media. Be careful, please, what you put on social media. It's mind-boggling sometimes. But you know, things of that, anything that can be considered a document is subject to being FOIA, and you have to keep. All right, let's talk about conflict of interest real quickly. Please be very careful about this. You know, not only could it be considered, you know, a violation be considered malfeasance, and you can forfeit your office, but it can invalidate contracts. And knowing violation is a class 1 misdemeanor. A knowing violation. And please don't forget, as far as the museum is concerned, the appearance of impropriety can be just as damaging as actual. Next slide, please. And you're not, please don't solicit anything, accept any money, service, favor. You know, somebody that's interested in getting a contract with the museum all of a sudden wants to mow your lawn, you know, or shovel your snow, you know, or has any other kind of situation where what you do on this board can benefit them, or whatever the case may be, or don't ask for loans for people, you know, because they know that they can be benefited by the museum, that kind of thing. So just be very careful. And if in doubt, ask Joe, who will then coordinate with us to make sure you're good to go. Or you can actually call the Attorney General's office directly, you know, the education section, and we will help you if you're, you if you don't wanna, talk directly with Joe, because we would rather you talk with us than have a problem. Really, really, really. Okay. Now, and anytime anything could potentially influence what you do on this board, that's what you want to stay away from. Or should I say, from which you want to stay away. I dangled that part. But no, it's important. It's very important. And you wouldn't believe how many people, oh, you mean my nephew can't get the contract at the museum to do blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, you probably don't want, you don't want to do that. You really don't want to do that. Next slide, please. All right, and we've already talked a little bit about that. If a reasonable person could question your impartiality on what you do with the museum because of some of the things that you get, and you know, it could be somebody just taking you to lunch once a week. Somebody that actually benefits from things involving the museum, taking you to lunch once a week. Well, you know, lunch, 15, you know, sometimes 15, 20, how, you know, no big deal. If it's so often, big deal, huge deal. You know what I'm saying? All right.
This is straightforward.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we just want to find that out. We don't, but anyway, we don't want to, yeah. All right, next slide, please. Sorry. Okay. All right, let's say that there's something that comes before the museum, you've been involved in a major project and you're getting some kind of remuneration or whatever, and it comes before the board to have some involvement with it. Well, I mean, that's fine, but you have to recuse yourself. You cannot vote on that. You know, if you have any type of relationship with something that's going on at the museum and a vote comes up regarding it, you must recuse yourself. Okay? Does everybody understand? Okay, okay, thank you so much. Next slide. All right, then we're talking about personal interest, you know, the salary more than 5,000 a year, blah, blah, blah. The best thing to remember about this is if you even remotely think that you may have a personal interest in anything involved in the museum, talk with Joe or talk with me, or, you know, I mean, Joe will come to us in the Attorney General's office and we'll make sure you're gonna be okay. Because we want you to be okay. Next slide, please. Okay, as y'all know, the disclosure form, you actually, when you first took office, you had to disclose your, you had a personal interest form that you had to disclose. Those have to be updated before, or on or before February 1st. You get fined if you don't do it. You get a fine. So please do it before February 1st. I've actually had to give the bad news to some people who did not obviously not on this board, but. Next slide. Questions? Anybody have any questions?
I think you fielded one yesterday, right? We talked about one yesterday, it runs to this report.
Yes, as y'all know, or I guess recently found out that you are required, the board is required to actually send a report regarding the museum to the governor annually. And I believe that was December 1st. It's in December, right? Before December. Yeah, I think it's before December 1st. So that's coming up. And the question was, to whom do we actually send it? Send it to the governor. You know, if he may give it over to somebody else, like the Secretary of Education, but if the statute says send it to the governor, you send it to the governor. And he can do with it whatever he wants to. Okay. One other thing I want to mention, closed sessions again. Whenever you go into closed session, anything you discuss in closed session is not to be discussed with anybody else. Now, a lot of times the board will say, well, we want Joe to stay in, or we want Ben to stay in, you know, they'll choose to have various people stay in because they're the subject matter expert of whatever's being discussed, that kind of thing. So it's not just the trustees that have to keep confidentiality, it's anybody that's allowed to stay in the closed session, and you can't, I mean, I'm talking, you can't talk to your spouse, but your best friend or your dog. You can't give any information regarding that closed session, okay? Thanks.
I have a question about electronic meetings, the participation part. So once the quorum is established at the site, then people can participate electronically. Do we need to actually vote that they can vote on motions and so forth, and they can enable there, or is that automatic?
Well, what happens is they will request from the chair or whoever is acting chair of the committee, and then of course the full board to be allowed to participate, and the director, they will also indicate the same to Joe. And as long as the chair of the committee and, you know, the full board approves it, then they are allowed to vote. So,
and does that need to be recorded in our minutes?
No.
Okay.
Now, the reason for why they're gone does. Now, if it's medical, you just have to say medical. You don't say why. Now, if it's a personal, you do, usually what you'll say is, I'm away on business. I'm in Fairfax on business, and, you know, or whatever the case may be.
Or 60 miles away.
60 miles or more. Now, don't forget, that means like today, 60 miles or more from Stanton.
Right.
Yes, from where you're actually going to be meeting.
Just 1 second, Glenn. Roberto's had his hand up there for a while, so Roberto, it's to you.
Yeah, just a quick question for clarifying. When the whole issue of fines being levied out there, is that to the whole board? Is that to the individuals involved? Like, who technically is having to pay that fee?
It's to whoever violated the law. And that actually is, you have to pay it personally. The museum is not going to pay that. And that's why, you know, it's so important, for example, that you not go off topic during a closed session or things of that nature, because then whoever's there may have a problem. Now, I've actually never heard of anybody, you know, getting fined. I mean, any of my boards, but we don't want to find out. We don't want to find out.
Okay, thanks.
You distinguish between responsibilities of the board of trustees versus members of the foundation, especially in the activities of raising money. When you talk about like weekly lunches and that kind of stuff, is there a difference?
Well, foundation is a 501c3. It's a private entity. You don't have the rules. You don't have, you know, you're not subject to FOIA, and that's why a lot of times you want donations to go to the foundation, you know, so they can be kept private. No one can come to you and say, I want to see a document. You're a private entity. You don't have to show them anything. And so everything I've been discussing here is not applicable to you. Right.
How do we got?
You know, you can meet as many lunches as
I just want to make one clarification. Earlier in the meeting, I said that Lisa was out for personal reasons. She's out for family medical reasons, so that she falls under that.
Yes, yes. Don't want her to be subject.
No, absolutely not. Okay, so any other questions on FOIA elsewhere? I don't see any more hands raised out there. So thank you very much, Cindy. Great, appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Good luck in your semi-retirement.
Thank you,
Still gonna be working. Next, we have Joe with the Executive Director's Report. Joe, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, a lot of what is in my report will be covered in the various committee reports, but I just want to say that the start of our new fiscal year has gone really well. You know, you've already heard from the board, and you're going to hear a little bit more from Brian during the advancement report and so forth. But I just want to say, without stealing thunder from other committees, that we've had a few instances that have really put us in strong positions. So since the last board meeting, we did have, and Tom was part of this, Jonathan, who jumped off, he's on vacation, he's somewhere in the tropics getting a tan. Nonetheless, we had a meeting with the governor's team. We had a lot of representation from the Secretary of Natural Resources, the Secretary of Finance, as well as the governor's office there to make a request for movement to the capital pool of VMNH Waynesboro. It was all well received. I thought it was very positive that they gave us a half-hour slot, but they kept us there asking us questions for an hour. So, we just don't know what's going to happen, but we do have a plan in place. So that is that we're really asked to be included within the governor's budget, which will come out in early December. So we have high hopes that that will occur. That should really pave the way for inclusion within the House and Senate budget as well. If not, we have commitments, and we're also looking to gain more commitments of support for budget adjustments to be submitted to the Senate and the House. So we can share all of those details with you, but I want to thank Lauren and Tom, Lisa who's not here, and others who have really kind of kept that conversation going. And Len and I, some other folks. Were you at the lunch with Steve Landis? No, you weren't. No. Anyway, former Delegate Landis was very kind. He sat down, literally typed up a checklist of all the things that we need to do to be in a strong position. So I thought that was really, really positive. Speaking of capital projects, I actually call this the tale of two trailers. So if you drive behind the museum right now, there is a work trailer that is meant for the start of the G.N.S. Adams Education Pavilion. So really excited. They basically said that if they can quickly remove the existing concrete before the new footers, the rest should go very smoothly. So we're looking at having a soft opening in spring, and we will plan out having a proper ribbon cutting and everything for that. So we're really excited about that. The second trailer kind of goes back to Waynesboro. So we were very excited in a lot of ways to receive the old Artmobile. Right, so some of you saw it last night. So this is the VMFA trailer. It is now parked at the museum lot in Waynesboro. We are working expeditiously to fill it with exhibits, and Ryan and Tim King and others are working to make sure that it has a proper wrap. So it will represent be kind of a semi-permanent structure for us to represent a toehold there in Waynesboro. So we will have a ribbon cutting at the Chamber of Commerce on December 8th, and we will be there for the LL Bean pop-up event. Yeah, that should be good.
On wheels.
Yeah, it's called the Bootmobile. They're going to have that event there, and we will be open to the public. The next time that we plan to go open to the public will be at the end of April for Riverfest, which is generally 2,000 to 3,000 people. There may be other opportunities that come up on the way. So otherwise, I just ask you, I'm not going to just repeat what I have over here in the director's report that is printed out, but I just want you to remember the staff that are involved in all these committee reports. They have been, you've been really good about recognizing that, but they've really done a lot of work. And kind of going back to what Art said in the Research and Collections Committee, we just have managed to recruit a very talented crop of people. We lost over the years a lot of talent for retirements, and a few people have moved on to greener pastures. But the folks that we've recruited and retained have really done a great job. So I want to pass it over to Ryan to talk about some specific numbers and the integration between the foundation and the museum.
Board, please, and chime in. So as far as the vehicle, the trailer wrap, it's a company in Roanoke that's doing the printing. So we I hand delivered a briefcase full of cash. a check for the deposit, because literally every hour counts at this point. So they're printing the graphics. We're gonna have the trailer washed. They're gonna probably start putting it on week after next. So start that month. So yeah, it's very exciting. It's gonna look great. So in your packet, you have the advancement report, which I'll kind of highlight. I won't go over all the different individual accounts, but I do want to hit some of the highlights. We have several grants in process. So these are all kind of tied to what we call our science outreach initiative. So this is what we've packaged together for exhibits, festivals, education programming. So it's all tied to science outreach. So it's been really successful as far as getting the grants, with this overall sort of larger reach. We're not targeting specific projects, it's more of the overall strategic goal. That's been very successful. Some of the recent grants have included the Monogram Foundation, community foundations, and others. Boxley is a corporate example. So lots of good partnerships. I do want to highlight specifically, we have talked about Museums for All a lot. So of course, that's free admissions for families within the SNAP program and also EBT cardholders. So we just got a grant from the local community foundation where we're able to increase our funding by 50% for that. So currently we have Hooker Furnishings and Carter Baker Trust. With the community foundation grant, we're able to increase that by 50%, which is great. So that's going to allow us to expand the program, reach more people. And you've heard us talk about it at festivals and everyday visitation. It's great to hear from the families. So really proud of that program, as we all are. Across the advancement report, you'll see increases. So the board talked about the first quarter success in revenue. So specifically for admissions and retail, it's the best first quarter we've ever had. Visitation is still growing post-pandemic, but even with that, I think it was the 6th best first quarter we've had in museum's history. So it's not where we want to be, obviously, but it's growing. So continue to monitor that. Let's see. If you look at the endowment balance on page 2 of the report, continues to grow. So the charts all look really good. They're going in the right direction. That's a combination of new gifts and also growth of the endowment itself. So we're close to 900,000. It changes by the hour, obviously. This is a snapshot as of September 30th. So we're going to keep an eye on that. Once we get close to the $1 million mark, we're going to plan a nice celebration because that's been a long-term goal. So the foundation is working hard on that. They're excited about celebrating that as well. So great success story. Memberships. So memberships are a hugely important thing that we do. Obviously, we're at a higher point now than we've been in at least 10 years. So we're selling membership at festivals, we're selling them at different events, and I think people see the value. So we're highlighting, not only do you get free admission every day, but all these festivals that we do, you can pay one price. Sometimes it's cheaper to join for the entire year than for a family to pay that day. So it's a great message. Staff do a great job at the festivals, really selling those, and not just festivals, but every day. So that's not only dollar amounts and number of members, but geographically expanding as well. So we'll keep an eye on that. Skipping ahead, lots of upcoming events. We've talked about some of the recent festivals. We've got our next exhibit opening February 10th. So that's going to be our bats exhibit. Currently, we have our dinosaur discoveries. So January, February is going to be really busy as far as change out of exhibits, take down, set up, all that fun stuff. So lots of good activity. February 10th is actually celebrating opening day of the new exhibit, which of course is the board meeting as well. So you hopefully see a big crowd of it. But we anticipate a good turnout. I want to skip to the very last page, skipping a lot of important stuff. This board actually asked at the last meeting about, we report on geographic visitation by zip code. So folks also asked about geographic distribution of donors. So we pulled that together. This is a snapshot of what we've come up with. Essentially what we see is, and it's not a surprise, it's kind of what we expected, is most of the donations come locally, whereas most of the dollars come from outside the local area. The reason for that is most of the donations are memberships, different annual fund gifts, whereas the larger grants that come in, whether it's federal grants or other foundations, tend to come from outside the area just based on geography, whether it's Richmond, DC, or whatever. So that's kind of what we're seeing. All this is good. There's no negative in this, but we do continue to monitor that. And I wanted to kind of highlight that since the board requested. I will say lastly, the foundation continues to be a good partner as far as facilitating a lot of the work that the museum does. So one thing that came up at the last meeting was a staff professional development fund. So the foundation did allocate that $7,500. We've already had a lot of folks take advantage of it. We've had conferences, we've had folks sign up for continuing education programs. So it's been really appreciated. We're going to track that, make sure you use every penny of it. But that is greatly appreciated.
And finally, what I'll say is, on behalf of the researchers, the curators, the foundation is a critical partner. So just signed on behalf of CHML through the foundation, further contract for work for Hayden and his team's work. So it's roughly 172,000 with Smithsonian that will come in different payments, all through the foundation. Thankfully, we have that 501c3 resource. So big picture highlights. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Just a quick question for you. Do you share all this great news across the organization? I know most people in this room know it, or people are working on this document, but with the greater population of employees of the museum, do you have like a all employee meeting or anything like that where you share that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we have periodic staff meetings throughout the year. And we give everyone a chance to talk about what's going on, make some major announcements, try to be transparent.
This is great, such great news, and it's got to be very motivating.
Yeah, it's nice to stay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, thank you. I'd also like to conclude the director's report by saying we're going to try something a little new. So, this museum has evolved over the years. If you go back a dozen years or so, we ran a bunch of different events and we called them fundraisers. It was kind of, just the way in which we were able to extract money that we could then use to support our operations. So we had a chili festival that everybody hated. It was a good event, but it was so much work, a ton of work, right? We used to, run a gala, and we used to, we had a golf tournament. I hated it. I'm sorry for those of your golfers. I couldn't stand it. It was the worst day of my life every year, right? And so we made a little bit of money, right? But we did make a profit, and we did take that. But then we just got better. We got better at doing things in the more traditional development way. And we grew memberships, we grew annual fund, we grew grants, we grew all these different things, which were, frankly said, a lot more bang for the buck. So we kind of let a lot of those things go. And you might remember we used to do grapes and grains, particularly before before the pandemic. Well, we're going to bring that back modified. So March 2nd, at the Natural History Museum, I think we chose like 6:30 to 9:30. We'll send all the pertinent details. We are going to have an outward-facing non-fundraiser for the community, right? This is going to be, we don't even have a name for it yet. We were talking about maybe a night out with Claude or something like that. I don't know, we're going to have something kind of fun. But at the same time, too, the idea is that we're going to put up a mural and we're going to talk about we have come so far, and it's because of you. And that is the person who's walking through the door. So the tickets are going to be meant to be affordable. The silent auction is not, we've had some really great silent auction donations, but so many of them are out of reach of the average person. So we're going to make that available. We're going to make some interactive activities within the galleries that lead to some prizes, some of which are duds and some of which are actually kind of cool, right? And then we got a few others. We have music. We're going to have themed adult beverages and that sort of thing. So it's again looking outward towards the community rather than just within us. So we will base the ticket price based upon what we calculate out as expenses, mainly the food, beverages, and a few other minor things. And so we'll be making that announcement here very soon to put on people's calendar. The reason I'm bringing this up is one, just to kind of talk about that history of the museum, but I could also use your help and the foundation board's help. Unfortunately, I had to leave and I didn't get a chance to talk about it yesterday. But we'll reach out. In the silent auction, again, we're trying to make things that are affordable. We have some items targeted that we are going to purchase and basically sell at cost to make our money back. So that it can be at a price point that people will actively bid on and be engaged. But some of the items I thought would be very nice, since we have people on the foundation board and the trustees that are all over the state. If I could get, out of the 45 of you, if I could get 15 gift baskets, that when we'll provide the baskets and the wrapping paper and all that kind of stuff, but we would like to see like maybe, regional wines, regional chocolates, regional coffees, from specific coffee shops or something. Little things that kind of represent specific regions, I think would be really cool. And I think it would be meaningful to people and so forth. Some of the other items we put out there are field trips. Those are, they're not no cost to us, they're staff time, a little bit of gasoline, right? And so forth. But, those are going to be around the state as well. So think about that. If you're a person that wants to lead a natural history tour of something or a museum tour at another facility, that's something that we can include in there. So we invite you to be creative with that. So But more on that, we wanted to get through Bones and Blues. Did you talk about Bones and Blues? No, we had our Halloween event and it's awesome. So
Yeah, we had 2,600 people within a 6-hour period. It really was more than 4 or 5 hours. The last hour, people joined it, but less people coming in. So of that 2,500, we had 2,600 we had almost 1,000 museums involved. So we had roughly 900 people. They came in through that program, very appreciative. Lots of costumes, interesting costumes, but it's a great time. And of course, the goal is to tie back to science while offering fun with the environment. It was an evening event, inside, outside activities. So yeah, I think it was very successful.
the revenues were very strong, sold more memberships, you know, it did everything that our festivals were supposed to do. So Robbie Hendricks and everybody else who kicked into that, it was an all hands on deck kind of effort, and it worked out really well. Again, looking outwards towards the community. So yeah, I think we met and exceeded goals for that. So it was a very nice event. The next one, Ryan said we did Masters of the Night opening federal grants.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Joe. I just want personally, I just want to thank Joe because I had the opportunity a few weeks ago to attend a meeting down in Charlotte of the ASTC Group of Science Museum executive directors and some trustees, where we were able to sit in on a session all day of partnering up with a board member and the executive director to learn how other museums are operating and what they're doing. And it was a fabulous event and full of ideas. And so and of course, everybody there knew Joe, right? So, but it was really, really motivating and very educational. I think some of what we got from that will help us in how we approach our strategic plan, we can talk about later this morning. So thank you again. And Mary's always with us as well. So thank you.
That was their first one, you know, so I think they kind of learned from that and wish to proceed from there.
So it's great. Okay, so
Mark.
Yeah.
Can I just take a second?
Sure.
Follow one of the lines of conversation. So my term on the foundation board ends in June. I'll return to that. But I'm also the Center for Large Restoration. Tom and I both serve on that board, is very much involved with design, really the strategic thinking behind this museum in Waynesboro. I just want everybody here to know that that board is highly committed to supporting the fundraising effort here in Waynesboro for this project, despite me rolling off. And then also just one comment before I set up on the sunset is I would, to get into your strategic plan, I would certainly ask the board of trustees to not be shy about challenging the foundation board as you develop the plans. Ask them to get involved. There's some new energy on that foundation board. I think that they would really be very energetic about taking this. Thank you.
That very much appreciated. Thank you very much. And thank you for everything you're doing with us. So Roberto, you've got your hand raised.
Well, knowing how subtle our marketing committee is, I feel compelled to ask a marketing question. I see that there's all kinds of great sponsors and corporate sponsors rather, and they keep jumping in. So I'm just curious to what extent when they commit to doing something, how willing are they or how active are they in using their PR and marketing vehicles to make noise about the partnership or the grant or whatever? And is there anything we can do as a board to help, facilitate that? A letter from the board saying thank you for your sponsorship, or any other standing low effort items that we might be able to come up with that just kind of help close the deal and give them warm and fuzzies when they actually, put pen to paper and write a check for us.
Thank you, Roberto, for teeing that up nicely. We do all the corporate partners we have. We try to basically start out with a menu of options. So we know who we are. We're not chasing money. This is what we do, and we try to work a fit. So with their mission, our mission, how does that come together? And so throughout that, we work together to promote the partnership, to promote the whatever event they're sponsoring. So a lot of times we have volunteers from whatever company. So for Bones and Blues, we had Carter Fest that had people all over festival with their t-shirts on promoting it. We work with Boston statewide for education and other activities. And they really push that through their social media. And so at the end of the partnership, or as the review happens, a lot of times we're providing them with numbers and stats to help their reports, because they're going to their meetings, justify why are we doing this, you know, how can we increase next year? So it's really a fit. We're getting numbers from them and they're coming for us. It's very active. It's definitely not a give the money, you know, forget it, ask for this.
And Roberto, I'll add to that. Ryan and I have been in front of these sponsors, corporate partners, as we call them, and reported out to the decision makers how the money was used and what the effect was. So, and I think generally, I can't think of a time that they were ever disappointed.
Yeah, we try to keep, like I said, we communicate throughout the partnership. So there may be times where the partnership shifts and modifies throughout based on changes.
Great. Is that good? Roberto, you good?
Yeah, I know. I just know having been on the other side of the fence, it's kind of a snowball effect. Nobody wants to be the first, but once you have a few in there, others want to jump on the train when they see the great positive effects that these things have. So we need to make as much noise as we can, and figuring, if there's any part that the board can play, we should volunteer to do that.
Great. There may be opportunities for others to do
Good. Fantastic. That's a good question. Okay, so I think that's it for the executive director's report, the advancement report, and I'm going to turn this over to Joe and Len Doran. I had the pleasure of having dinner sitting next to Len last night. So we had some good discussions already, but I look forward to doing the next phase here.
Yeah, before we let Len take the stage here, I just want to give a little bit of background. As you may remember from past conversations, board chair Lisa wanted us to maybe go off-site, maybe get a chance to learn about another agency. This is, of course, a state agency. They have a 501c3 nonprofit foundation, just like we do. From their report from 2018-2020, this, of course, was somewhat impacted by the pandemic, as that kind of started to take effect around March and end of the fiscal year's June. But during that time period, they had an average per year of 81,000 family members come through and 36,000 teachers and students. So you can see that those are better numbers than what we have. They have many more urban areas from which they can draw tourism traffic, the infrastructure of I-81 and 64 and so forth, plus nearby attractions. And, so I think this lends some credence to the idea that we should do very well with the branch campus, 9 miles down the road. Their staff at that point was 32 full-time staffers and 37 wage. I'm assuming the wage are a lot of the people they have doing the reenacting in the villages and so forth. Their budget is at that point was $1.8 million appropriation. At that point, ours was in the high twos, around 2.7, 2.8, if I recall. And they had about $700,000 in revenues. This report did not include grants and foundation gifts, which I'm sure plays a big role in what they do. So you can see there's a lot of similarities in size. One the notable difference is the large number of part-timers. I don't know how many part-timers we have now. 5. Right, roughly. Okay, so yeah, so and that number varies quite a bit. So we're not even at half that level, but otherwise we see some numbers that are fairly similar. And they, as you saw when you took your walk around the whichever village you chose to walk around, they have some very interesting maintenance challenges from that we don't have. Patching a roof is something I don't know that we could accomplish, right? But so I just want to give you that little bit of background. Again, I've already introduced Len. I'm going to let him come on up and give us some of.
Let me give you that. There's a couple of more things on the second page. So
okay,
a little bit about me.
Perfect. Thank you.
You bet. All right. We're going to sit.
Yeah, you can sit or stand right over here. That way the folks online can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. You want to go ahead with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So Len, he's got more than 50 years of nationally recognized nonprofit management, consulting, fundraising experience. His undergraduate and graduate studies include politics, history, philosophy, theology, secondary school administration, higher education, psychology and business. I didn't know about the psychology part, Len. He's a veteran of the U.S. Air Force, holds an undergraduate degree from St. John's University in New York, a graduate degree from Inter-American University of Puerto Rico, and a graduate degree from the American University, DC. He has done additional undergraduate professional studies at Georgetown University, Harvard University, Dartmouth, and University of North Carolina, and the University of Southern Florida, the Florida Institute of Technology. He's a graduate of the Association of Fundraising Professionals Faculty and Training Academy, and he is one of a small group of fundraising professionals to hold this internationally recognized credential. Presently, Len is the CEO of Wexford Group, a consultant firm for philanthropy throughout the nation. Len has had a career creating, building, and improving advancement and fundraising programs for nonprofits. He's also known for his expertise in nonprofit administrative computing and donor data research. He has directed and overseen more than 40 capital campaigns. He's raised millions of dollars for nonprofit organizations, served clients in virtually every area of nonprofit work. He's taught elementary school, middle school, high school, and college and university. I would have to say the elementary school would probably be the most challenging.
Third graders.
All right, currently is a substitute teacher in the Augusta County School System, a board member of the Stanton Downtown Development Association. He's been elected president and also chairs that organization's organizational committee. He is known for his candor, integrity, and well-developed sense of humor, which I can attest to. He is president of Stanton. He's an active sailor, an ice hockey fan, enjoys reading, Irish American folk music, national, state, and local politics, and travel. So, Len, thank you for agreeing to join us.
Just some clients.
Oh, here's this is a launch list of some selected campaigns, which include the South Carolina State Museum, the Museum of Hilton Head Island, Lawrence and Memorial Hospital, Bayfront Medical Center, St. Paul's School, Cape Henry Collegiate School, Woodbury Forest School, Middlesex Hospital, the Palmetto Project, Washington County Hospital, and West Town School. So, Len, the stage is all yours.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me, Joe. Nice to meet all of you. I heard some things about it, and they were all good. No one ever says anything bad. In keeping with the theme of this building, I was thinking this morning about what would be a good joke that's politically correct and all that other stuff, so you don't get in any trouble. My favorite joke is, why do cows wear bells? Anybody know?
To add vowels to their vocabulary.
No,
That's good.
no, actually, it's because their horns are broken.
That's very safe.
Yeah, that doesn't offend anybody.
That works for me.
Apologies to the cows. Yep. When people use the word fundraising, I usually go like that. The business that I'm in is called development. Fundraising is spaghetti dinner, Girl Scout cookies, things like that. When you get into development, you're really creating a relationship with your donors. And if you don't have a relationship with your donors, or you don't at least make that effort, you'll find it's kind of hard to raise money. I think the goal that I've been shared with is perfectly doable. There's a lot of money in Charlottesville. There's a community foundation in Charlottesville. In Stanton, there's also a community foundation that covers about 5 counties on that side of the mountain. And there's also in Charlottesville an amazing number of restaurants. If you like to eat out, just check into a hotel for about a month and we'll roam around Charlottesville. It's unbelievable how many there are, and they're all pretty good. The other thing about Charlottesville, it's interesting. All of the 3 cities we're talking about, which of course is Charlottesville, Waynesboro, and Stanton, have roughly the same place on the poverty line. Poverty in all 3 cities, including Charlottesville, is about 15 to 20%. And that doesn't surprise us. Leonard and I talked about it this morning. By the way, he's Glen 1, I'm Glen 2. The other thing that is really important is you have to make sure people know about the campaign. It's called awareness.
It's really hard to get people to drive up to the front door of the trailer and throw a check there. They just don't do that. I often look around the front door places, but there's never any checks there. So you have to go out there and get it. Fundraising is actually fun. Actually, I'm partially deaf. And when I first heard about it, I thought they were saying, fundraising, fun, hey, fun, that's for me. Good time here. But it's really called development. And it really is about relationships. There is plenty of money around. Plenty. Just don't ever read the Chronicle of Philanthropy. Give it this negative note about, oh, giving's off and all this stuff. It's really not. It's all pretty much the same. It's a question of a goal that someone set. By the way, speaking of goals, you never should set a goal that you don't think you can reach. There's nothing worse than closing a campaign and not reaching the goal. And the other thing that's really important is to step the campaign. You go after your board and other people's hurt. It's not inside out, upside down, basically. And what you have to do is begin to show that things are moving along. When you get to that first, whatever decision the consultant makes for this, where you're actually going to get to this goal, then you start phase 2 campaign for the rest of it. And it's just a lot easier and a lot less annoying, nothing else. The other thing about cities, they're all kind of the same. Waynesboro is in the process of becoming. Waynesboro, about 10 years ago, I would not have walked from my car to the restaurant we ate in last night. It's improved a lot. And it's going to improve more. The airplane company that's coming here with 300 high-skilled workers, they're going to love the museum, especially the Science Museum. The other thing that's interesting, if you were to draw a circle around 3 cities, there are more than 120 schools, colleges, universities, and even UVA, I think, that doesn't have a real program in what you guys do, but I think they welcome it as well. And we should ask them for a gift. They have plenty of money too. And that's the important thing. You know, Bully Sutton was once asked, well, why do you rob banks? And he said, because that's where the money is. And that's kind of the idea of a campaign. You got to go where the money is. If you came to me, I'd probably have to say, let me see how much I can get from the car before we talk about this. But it's important to recognize that money is not distributed equally. There's also a certain feeling, every once in a while when I'm feeling kind of down, I think about the fact, hey, what you do is like what Robin Hood did. You know, you rob from the rich and you give it to the poor. It's a great deal. Can't beat it. It's very important. The other thing that I think is important is there is a real tradition of philanthropy in all 3 of the areas that we're looking at. And that tradition will make a huge difference in kicking off the campaign. Again, the most important things are awareness. Make sure people know you're doing something. And the other thing is cultivation. If you've never been taught cultivation, it's kind of like going on a date. It's not that great, but it's, you know, it's one of those things. And it really is a good thing to learn how to do that. I have some friends who came to the profession late. And one of them said, wow, this is a great thing. Now I know how to negotiate with my husband. So it's worked out pretty well for some people. And that's really what you want to do. And then the other thing is just being real positive about it. After that FOA presentation, I had to ask Glenn One what he thought about the foundation, and I knew the 501c3 would cover us. Yes. But anyway, so that's what it did. And that's a great thing. We can talk about it. We never mention names. Never mention names. If the Grand Dame of one of the biggest states in Charlottesville gives us money, it's a gift from a Charlottesville resident, and that's the best way to do it. You don't want to be running names around because everybody in this business looks at everybody else. list of donors. And all of a sudden, your donor is now giving to the operation down the block or something. You don't want to help them too much. We do help each other in some of this. In my way of thinking, this is almost like a triangle. You have individuals, one point of the triangle, you have corporations in another point, and you have foundations down here. It's possible, it happens sometimes, to really hit it to the foundation. I will talk more about that the next time I see you, but anyway, you can do it. Those three things you can do, and it's just great if you can sort of run your campaign on that basis, that you're working on those three different things. Anyone have any questions?
Let's talk a little bit more about cultivation. You mentioned the word, but I didn't really quite catch it.
What you really have to do is become sort of a friend to the person you're asking for money. The larger the amount of money, the more time you have to do. You really have to work on that. And you can do it in a lot of ways. I have a acquaintance who's actually the president of the foundation that his grandfather started. If you've ever driven on a non-federal road in New York and Connecticut, grandfather created all those stone buildings that you've probably seen up there that are restrooms and gas stations and stuff. And needless to say, we did very well. So anyway, with cultivation, we were having dinner with him one night in Washington, and we were talking about talking about a grant that we had already received from this foundation. It was about $2 million. And we had forgotten totally to put a piece in there about how we would evaluate this program. I was sitting there and we're talking, and finally said, you know, we kind of didn't remember to do this. Okay, plan. 3 paragraphs. That's it. Nothing more. I don't want to read all this stuff. I know all about the program. 3 paragraphs. I went back to my office the next day and I wrote the 3 paragraphs. And I happened to notice something about him. It was very consistent. Always wore Argyle socks. He wore Argyle socks to a formal, whatever. So I trotted over to a little store in Charlottesville and I bought him a pair of Argyle socks. And in the letter that I sent, I said, now, when you read this proposal, I'm going to knock your socks off. And here's another pair you can put on. He called me 2 minutes after he got the package. And he said, let me talk to my board. Well, I happen to know he's the board. There's something else. And he said, give me a minute. And he comes back on the line. He said, yeah, we're going to approve that. You want it all at once? If we can. Okay, great. And that was it. A pair of socks, they cost about $10. That's the kind of thing you want to do, except even simpler. You find a magazine article or you hear something on the radio, read something in the newspaper. Sending that off to the person you maybe already talked to once can make a huge difference. A huge difference. So, any questions? And by the way, no one has ever died raising money. We have that right from the top. I should tell you one other thing. I'm actually a former Benedictine monk. I was kind of asked to help these guys out, and I got pretty comfortable and cozy with the abbey. And I was there for about 5 years part-time, and then I spent a year there. I decided it wasn't for me, and a few weeks later, I was interviewing for a job in Washington. There were 6 people on the board, and they all, one of them said, Glenn, why did you leave the monks? I put my head back and said, well, women, and the whole table lost it. It's unbelievable. And what's funny is the guy who got the job lasted exactly 9 months. And they were calling me 9 months later because I was in them too. He said, I'm so sorry, but I'm available right now. So something else. So that's the way it was. Joe knows how to reach me if you have any questions. I live in Stanton and I work from home. My office is at my home. Any questions?
Glenn, actually, I mean specifically about Frontier.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. It's all so they've had this long-standing vision to create the Crossings Gallery,
right? Which is gonna be, you know, a substantive exhibit, facility and so forth. It's kind of hit some bumps on the road schedule wise, because I think it's been like 20 years.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
easily. This museum came out to being by, Judge and Mrs. Cochran. Judge Cochran was a Supreme Court judge in Virginia. Mrs. Cochran was a descendant of Judge Stewart, and she never lets you forget it either, believe me. I served on a couple of boards with her, and she was just a very, very interesting, entertaining person. She pretty much put the footprint down about this museum. And little by little, they went along and they figured out what they were gonna do. It was originally not supposed to be all these different countries' farmhouses. It was supposed to be more of a, kind of almost a demonstration farm, maybe look more like the valley or something. But somehow it got switched, and there they went with these various and sundry houses, which were all very interesting. And the interpreters were very interesting too. And the thing that's interesting is, serving on the foundation board, we had a series of meetings. The first meeting, we were told, well, we're gonna give them $1 million, so we have to raise that from the foundation. Okay, $1 million. The second meeting, the same person got it up to half, 500 million. And then the third person got it up to 800 million. Well, by the time they were finished, I had packed my bag and was headed south, actually, because I don't believe that that's gonna be a good thing for them. I just don't think they can do it, unless they've got some skeletons in the closet or something, but whatever they have, who knows? The plans are, actually, this was supposed to be the crossing, and it kind of looks like a ship from the outside. I don't think the cows have it, knew it was a ship, but that's okay. And then the other thing they really are working on, or trying to move along with, is to figure out where their donors are. They get some financial support, but in terms of metrics, the financial support that we get from their annual funds would never drive, you know, the high number of a requested amount of money. It just wouldn't do it. The metrics just aren't there. And the other thing, quite frankly, is they have a 40-member foundation board. If you get 6 people at a meeting, you're lucky. It's a real problem. They just don't have a lot of people that show up. Not much you can do about that. And they also, the other thing, when the pandemic hit, the head of the foundation's president decided to fire the entire development staff. Needless to say, that went over really big in the community, because the woman who was head was one of the most loved people in Stanford. Slowed up giving a little bit, but anyway, you don't want to do that. If you're going to fire somebody, do it long before you start trying to raise them. Any questions? Did I miss anything, John?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Thank you.
Good. Len, thank you so much for the support again.
I'm going to leave this map on the table. It's for the museum. And if you went out the door you came in and sort of went a little bit to your right, there's a path there with a sign, and it will take you to, of course, my favorite house on the property, happens to be Irish.
Of course, everyone's welcome. You know, we're here, you know, at the conclusion of the meeting, if you want to wander the grounds, and they do have a shuttle service as well, so you can see the Irish as well as the other houses as well. So, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, I think we'll take a break now for lunch, and I think we're making a working lunch.
Yeah, take 5 minutes. If you need to use the restroom, you can go out those folding doors. There's an elevator, take it straight down to the next level, and it is straight across the way from it.
They do a massive number of homes. Well, the valley is. A lot of it.
Give him an eye and you know when he's not in these times, he is.
Are you doing,
I only saw the place where you put the money. I don't know where the actual. Yeah, the shot part, I was never a connection.
Kyle, my husband is the absolute.
Oh, okay.
Most fabulous.
All right.
He has the artistic job.
You're from town of London.
You might have,
Oh, I. Yeah, they're for the door.
Right, who made it?
and I would love to hear about not many events. I do it. You are going to be Monica, you put so much effort into it. You're like, we ate chili, we ate the corner. I mean, the deal is, but those last ones. You can use that. I haven't thought about it. Let's go get to. Good. No, I had to read it out, and so I think that's. Yeah, I guess that. A lot of things. Understand. We did. No, you didn't. United States. Starting fun for this line. I'll volunteer. It's just been a top. It's just fascinating. I'm done. Thank you so much. Haven't come into it yet. Yeah, you're a quick little thing. Oh, yeah. This is like it's gonna be. More than this. I'll have a lot of services. Hey, thanks for that.
I want to take the opportunity.
No, that was good. I appreciate that.
Roberto, do you want ham and cheese or do you want turkey?
Yes.
We'll eat it for you. We'll eat it for you.
I'm standing by the door waiting for my Uber delivery.
If you get to handle that now, you're close.
Right, all right. Here's a bite.
It was very good.
My article is gonna keep my plate when he.
Yeah, he's probably wants to bet my ear next week. That's
Yeah, what we're gonna do is we're gonna, there's a Virginia faculty who $10 tax surcharge the first next, right? And so I don't know if her particular background skill set rules be anyway applicable to what he's aiming to do. Those the North Fork.
yeah, what's the 4%? So this is a Waynesboro business I heard. Yeah, it's like, what's really huge. Right down the block. And it really is. Come out. I'm certainly reading.
Army can't move on an empty stomach.
Joe, there's no wild boar roasting on a spit somewhere at one of the.
There probably is. Oh, we took a few minutes out, walked around, and we went into the German village. And there, there was a lady there making, what do you call it? Tack biscuits or hardtack or whatever it's called, you know, so, but they had the fire going and everything, so it was going on. In fact, Roberto, today, at some point, they were having a hammer in, so they're getting blacksmiths from all over the map. They're gonna come and do demonstrations, so it should be a pretty big day here.
Wow, nice. Wish I was there.
I know, I wish I could stick around for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They all before us.
Yeah, that's what happens when you're remote. I think you have a couple of pages.
Yeah.
The initial, 75 dollars.
Line number 2? No. What was that number that the French Cultural Museum Foundation thought they had?
I know
how many?
My dog.
Okay, so you want to put it, you know what I guess, have you had like something now, or it's full? Yeah, so it's inside that. Right.
No questions. Yeah.
but I got that.
I think he mistakenly said 500 million or something like that. And
Quite ambitious.
Yeah, yeah, that can't be right.
No, yeah, you're right.
I can't remember the number I was doing.
But it was fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
five.
And so like that, I mean, we had. Probably one they would say.
I'd be curious about the considerations.
That's a hard.
Because we took the opposite tack.
It's easier to count individuals.
This is what we know we can raise.
Just that are revenue.
Go to the state and say, you know, and we're raising over 10%. Sure, actually, Senator, I'm sorry, Delegate Landis said. It's good to spot on what the state likes to see. Raise privately to support appropriate. So, yeah, I think that.
That's first.
One challenge that we just is the fact that.
And I go, it's one issue, but I changed.
Mark, should I take another bite? Yeah, take another bite. Okay. I'm waiting for the call in a minute.
I knew the moment I shut something in.
I was watching it. You're gonna give me the look. Yeah.
There's so many different ideas about what it could be, and then it has moved between several agencies. And I say, body kind of relationship. And so I think that that's more part of the authority here. Yeah. It is.
Okay, I think we're gonna get started here in a minute. Let's Mark finish this bite he had over there, and we'll get going. This morning we had our really lively, as usual, research and collections committee meeting, and there's so much to talk about, so many things going on. So I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Arnett.
Well, thank you. I think one of the reasons that the research and collections committee meetings are so lively, as Mark puts it, is because it really is. We really do talk about the core of the activities of the Natural History Museum. Exhibits and education programs are incredibly important, but they all emanate from the research and collections that are part of the museum's foundation. And one of the things that I've sort of kept my eyes open for over the years were articles that clearly explain the importance of maintaining and building those collections. I realize that most of us are not scientists, most of us are not natural history people, certainly not museum people, but that's okay. There are plenty of resources out there, and so once in a while I include an article that helps, I think, put together a vocabulary that we can start using as an organization to sell and promote the museum's activities. And this article that I found that just published, co-authored by a friend of mine a few months ago, is entitled "The Silent Extinction of Species and Taxonomists: An Appeal to Science Policymakers and Legislatures." It's included in your packet. I'm not going to belabor it too much other than calling your attention to it. But one of the many things that appealed to me about this article, one, I found it very accessible especially for a lay audience. And secondly, there is a section there that specifically addresses natural history museums and specifically mentions natural history museums that are considered to be small or medium sized, which is right where we fit in, and talks about the important role that museums such as ours have in documenting the biodiversity of our planet. And one of the activities that our museum is involved in, and many others across the country and world, is digitization. We hear this banning about all the time. What does it mean? The short version, it means is taking all that data, those little labels, I'm thinking of insects, but there's other methods of documentation. But you take the printed information that's associated with these specimens, digitize it, and make it available to the world. So researchers can view the collections from afar, and supporting this documentation with photographs will be very helpful, incredibly important. And by doing this, the Virginia Museum of Natural History has put itself on the map. We have incredibly important collections that are getting great attention from our curators and support staff. We also have some other collections that probably could use more attention too. If we had this staff. And this is one of the appeals of the article, is that this is something that natural history museums can do by supporting research, by hiring more curators and curatorial staff. So if you have a moment, do take a moment to look at these articles. For this particular article, I also want to bring to your attention the detailed report that was supplied by our curators and quoted by Ben Williams. Thank you again for pulling it all together. The curators have gone through and not only talked about their activities for the past quarter, which they usually do, and I'm always amazed and grateful how incredibly productive they are and talented they are, but also we've begun talking about this idea that the museum, in order to remain vital and provide information that people require in the study of biology, we have to be able to grow the collections, and that takes space. And it was mentioned the last meeting that we are almost at 100% capacity for most of the collections. Some of the collections are over 100% capacity. And so curators and curriculum staff have to be very creative and think carefully about the things that they take in and how those collections are to be used and so on. So I think it's very timely that they're starting to put together reports that look at what they expect to acquire this year through collections that they're actively seeking through field work, different accessions, opportunistic collections. These are collections that are suddenly made available when someone dies or a university decides they're not going to maintain these collections anymore and it needs to go home. And oftentimes we're it. When it comes to natural history collections in Virginia, we are it. And we have a responsibility to make sure that these other collections out there that aren't being cared for, but certainly could fit in within our mission, that we have the ability as much as possible to preserve these collections for the future. And and all this, I'm bringing all this up because this feeds into our plans for the future. We've worked very hard at developing a 5-year plan for the past 5 years, and we're about ready to finish that up. I won't say finish it up, but we're coming to the end of that period. Now we're looking ahead. What are we going to do? What are our priorities? And clearly, just based on our state mandate, one of our priorities is to maintain and grow this collection, which is going to require space. How do we do that? Do we do it by expanding our footprint? Do we do it by taking advantage of the space that we have at Douglas Avenue? Do we do it by acquiring additional properties? Those questions remain to be answered. But now is the time to start seriously thinking about this, thinking where we are, where we're going in terms of research and collections, and how we're going to meet the challenges of the future. So do take a moment to take a look at the report and get an idea of what we're talking about in terms of space. And I realize it's a beast. Ben and I were joking that it's a beast this time, but I think you'll find it interesting to see the kinds of things that research and collections is considering in the future, because the future is now. There are decisions that need to be made sooner or later. How we meet those demands and the challenges coming, that's what we all do here. I also want to mention that in our discussions, we've talked about developing a series of short presentations, phrases, which are just minutes long, among the committee members, and then present them to all of you for approval. So all of us have common language that we could use easily when we're talking to our peers, when we're talking to legislators, potential fundraisers, as to the importance of museum collections and the role it has in terms of our advancing science and also the impact it has on communities and education and training the next generation of teachers and biologists and so on. There's so many intersections that are happening that are folk. What am I trying to say? I'm not talking to this. I'm thinking about my next flight. That's my problem. The Natural History Museum is really at the center of so many wonderful things, and we need to be able to articulate just what those things are and share with the community and legislators, policymakers, the importance of natural history. The fact that we are in the Virginia Code, you know, I've always looked at research and collections and maintenance of collections. This is not luxury. It's not a bunk collection, you know, with pretty specimens. These are this is the historical record of our natural resources and biodiversity, which is rapidly disappearing. This is really one of the most important things we can be doing. And people need to realize that, but we also need to be cognizant of who we're talking to and be able to articulate that much more eloquently and succinctly than I have just. So that's something that'll be coming your way. Does anybody have any questions?
I'll just ask a comment to that. I think coming back from Len's discussion, one of the questions that came up there was cultivation. And what you were getting there is cultivating these group of people to become friends of the museum, to understand what we're doing, to appeal to their everyday lives. As Tom was saying, people who are interested in hooks and bullets, and hunters and fishermen. I mean, you know, how do we appeal to people? How do we appeal to the politicians by talking about, you know, the founding fathers in the state of Virginia and how they approached and embraced natural history? So there's lots of different things we can condense down to really begin to have a great appeal.
Well, I really think that the key among many is to get people in the door, decision makers in the door, and give them the Cook's tour, show them the collections, talk to the curators, see what they're doing, because a lot of this is just completely foreign to most people, and many people do get excited when they see displays or collections that have multiple species. They're amazed to find out these things are here in Virginia. They had no idea. I'm one of those kids who got fired up at a museum many years ago, looking at a display of insects. I can still remember what species were there, even though I don't know what they were at the time, and that had a dramatic impact on me. And it can have a dramatic impact on people who aren't going to become scientists, but it can make them a lot more disposed to supporting with scientific efforts.
When we were meeting this morning, and having our regular fun meeting, which we do, I was trying to, there was a phrase I was trying to find that I couldn't, and I have realized it now: science telling. And there is a whole movement now and funding available for this shift from storytelling to science telling. And the notion is narrative. What underlies all of this is the recognition that one of the reasons storytelling is so pervasive across cultures and why it sticks is because of the narrative structure itself. And so, for example, NASA has grant programs, National Geographic has grant programs around this concept of science telling. And it can be everything from podcasts like you were doing, which is just remarkable as well, but just the recognition that you figure out how to speak to people on their own terms as opposed to coming at them. And so if anyone is interested in this, we've got a strong cadre of people around the state in the sciences who are working on these ideas now.
Well, this is what we're talking about, strategic planning, too, is identifying audiences and, more importantly, constituencies and promoting museum programs and getting support for those programs. And there's certainly an active cooperation between our two committees to come to that end.
But look for that term, science telling.
There are good TED Talks that I think we can all benefit from that talk about the art of storytelling, which I'm sure is the science.
Absolutely.
Great to take note that the Frontier Collection Museum does a monthly program, something related to the museum, but something kind of distant. It's just reminding me sitting up here for the big place. They had a guy coming in to talk about the history of New York, 1607 to the current day, and it was not on funny, but it was great. The whole thing was cool. I'm sure it was true. I really, it's like 1507, that had a good time down there in Jamestown, so I guess they had a good time. But really, fun. And they get about 50 people, which is great, because the people have demonstrated interest, and that kind of the first step of figuring out who they are. But you always want to take their name instead of the mail address, you know, oh, that's fine. That's very effective.
Well, thank you, Mark. I'm done with my 2 minutes. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on, Nathan.
Yeah, so the education and public programs and the exhibit subcommittee, we met this morning prior to the full board meeting. Just a few highlights. One is we have this very nice hard copy education program guide that is out for the 23-24 year. There's hard copies here on the table if you're interested. Lots of interesting programs that are in there. So lots of highlights of what we do from the education and public program side. A few highlights from our meeting. We had a good discussion about the microscope lab, which has probably been mentioned in some of the previous meetings, but it's really helping to draw some of the school groups back into the museum, which is something that's been slow to redevelop since the pandemic. You know, any of you who have children in school or know people in school or involved in education at all know that there's just a lot of resistance to doing that kind of thing right now. They're sort of focusing so much on just getting kids to come back to school and doing in school training. So it's nice to have a hook to get these groups back into the building, and then hopefully that'll continue to roll. And we've seen that in the numbers too, as the programs and the number as served at the museum continues to grow year over year, emerging out of the pandemic. And then just one last note, when we get back to the museum in February, or if you happen to be there earlier, the Stegosaurus has now been moved from the temporary exhibit space into the lobby. So you will be greeted by that sucker next time you're there. So you drive it. That's
it. Wow. It's quick. Anything to add? Did he catch it all?
You might be interested to know that here, all the bus programs are paid for by the foundation. They're not very expensive, it's school buses, but the most interesting thing is it's mostly structured for 4th graders. The 4th grade curriculum in the public school, you're studying state government and you're studying where things came from and all this sort of stuff. It hasn't been changed to my knowledge, but basically we're pretty well at that. And they don't do as well during the week with anybody except tourists. And other than that, weekends are pretty good. But it seems to really work with buses.
And Chrissy and her team do a really good job, because I think a big hook for this microscope lab is that it fulfills some of those standards that they're trying to teach. And so they get to do it outside of the classroom and still check off some of those boxes.
Great. Okay, we're gonna move on. Tom, you've got double duty back to back here, so we'll move to facilities.
Yeah, I'll start with facilities. We haven't met since our last quarterly meeting, so I don't have much to report. I will direct your attention to Joe's summary of what's happening with the T.S. Adams Education Pavilion. We're expecting contractors to be on site in this month or so. The other thing that was in the minutes from our last meeting was about the YMCA building next door. We had not gotten any updates on that. We're still waiting, certainly staying in touch with them, but nothing to report there. So that's pretty much it for facilities. We're gonna move on. Move on. So waiting for our advocacy committee. Of course, there's a lot going on. I want to start by welcoming you to the Shenandoah Valley. This is my home, and so I appreciate the board coming here to meet to learn about this part of Virginia. Hopefully, you've been here before and you know a lot about what's going on in planning for our campus. Joe provided a little bit of background on that. Mentioned that we had the opportunity to get in front of the governor's staff, as well as a number of the directorate there, to advocate for moving to the Capitol pool. I do want to say we remain active in the community with outreach and so forth. You heard about maybe you had a chance to visit the trailer that we've now got on site at the proposed building location. And we're gonna take full advantage of that. As you heard, we're gonna wrap it. Ryan was working closely with the company and wrote up on that. There are 3 sets of minutes in your packet from our committee meetings, and I'm not gonna go through everything that we talked about, but I will direct your attention to a summary that I tried to put together of economic impacts. And you'll remember that back in 2013, we did a feasibility study with the help of Chimera Analytics, a company in Richmond. And we conservatively estimated that there would be 65,000 visitors coming to this branch campus, and that based upon that, we would be able to generate enough revenue to sustain the ongoing expenses. We've revisited that, so it's been updated to recently, so that we now know more in 2023 dollars that we will have a $4.2 million annual impact on the community if this campus is constructed. That it is a $33 million project. We right-sized that, and we've been accepted through the architectural review and DODB, and we are now working with exhibit design. We've had 2 out of 4 planned meetings with the exhibit designers, and we're in a really good place to move to the next step in getting funding for the capital. And I would encourage you to look at that summary of economic impacts. I'm not an economist, but I tried to read it in such a way that I could communicate it intelligently. We've had some conversations in the community about return on investment from a project like this. What can we say about the return on investment? Well, you don't earn your money back right away, but if you look at a 30-year period, we're generating revenue over that 30-year period based upon the expenses of what. And I think if we can make that fiscal argument clear, even in the maybe steady budget climate conditions we're in now, hopefully. So go look there if you want to make arguments like that. As I said, I'm not an economist, and certainly take feedback on that. The other thing that I would say, and these are in the October set of minutes to attachments. The other is the Crozet Tunnel visitation. So something that's interesting that's happened here quite close to Waynesboro is the Crozet Tunnel open, and we've been following how many visitors we get to the Crozet Tunnel. And we get 80,000 people coming to a tunnel. And why would they not come to see our natural history exhibits? We think that 65,000 is a very big. The city renewed its resolution for $1 million, and I think that's all I have to say, unless there are questions.
There's a theory in economics that every dollar is traveled 7 times. And where it goes in the community, and they're lucky back to you, so they provide initiatives. The reason the tunnel is so popular is free. And little kids love it. I mean, people are yelling, screaming, "Oh, it's going to be this kind of stuff." Kind of fun. By the way, same players don't know that.
Yeah, absolutely. And a very interesting, history of the laborers that were there, as well as the engineer who designed it. So that's great stories to tell, right, Carol? So, and whenever I get an interview to talk about this branch campus, I always talk about great stories to tell. So I agree with Carol that we need to be science telling.
Fantastic. Any other questions, Tom? And thank you for your help on this committee as well. Move on now to the very last one, Strategic Planning Committee, and I'll sort of take that piece. So we met back in late October in Richmond. Bill, I think, was on the line with us as well, and had our kickoff for the next strategic plan. So the current strategic plan went from June 2020 to May 2025. And so the new plan starting with June 2025, but frankly, starting on it now is almost last minute to get it going, because we have lots of things we have to develop, we have to put it together, we have to get it in front of the board, we have to board approve it, then we have to work on the execution plans, then we got to get ready to get started and get going, right? So there's lots of pieces to that. And as Art alluded to, we had discussed in the meeting we had a framework of how we can bring together and develop and understand what all the constituencies are for our museum, right? And being able to go out and talk to each of these groups of people, companies, foundations, so as we go back to, so let's kind of, and how do we engage them to find out what's important to them? Obviously included in that group of constituencies are our employees and other people who have been working with us. So we felt that was the best way to go at it. Let's collect up all the information first. Let's see what people are saying about it, and let's sort of distill that down into some specific issues and factors and objectives that we think are reasonable. And then we'll have a laundry list of things that we can, as a board, go through and look at and go, that makes the most sense, or that makes the most sense. So I'm looking at this for 50,000 people now, right? So to get that started, what we did was we put together a little bit of a template in each of your board packets. There's a little sheet at the back. It's a little bit busy because Mark did it. It's got too many words on it because I did it. But in any case, what I'm looking for is you guys to have a look at this, and then within the next few weeks, please, if you would, before you get busy into the rest of the holiday season, come back to me and let me know whether you're willing to help to sponsor one of these areas and help to provide input and guide the discussion there in terms of figuring out what's important to these constituencies. Some of you are very connected. Some people have already volunteered. Their names have been thrown in there. And then I think Joe nicely volunteered staff members for each of those areas as well. So that's good. But the work is at this stage is at the board level, right? And we envision in terms of a timeline, trying to get together as a board and have this, at least this basic information in front of us, and then begin to talk about what's important, what everybody wants to do and how they want to balance off the various parts of our charter and decide where the monies are going to go and how we're going to get there, right? So I think after people have a look at that last page and see that you could, there's places you think you can add value or willing to, that you please do that. It's going to have to get done one way or another, right? So that would be great. Before I mark it, then it's yeah, let's in our meeting as well, Lisa has charged the strategic planning committee with leading the DEI initiative for the board. So we'll be beginning to work on that as we go forward as well. And we've been recommending some things that ties nicely with the plan. I think the other part that ties nicely into it is discussions that Roberto will be having in a minute about reaccreditation, because there are certain things as part of reaccreditation that we have to match up with in our planning. And I think the other piece that's pretty critical, which the list that I provided is not prioritized, but the real thing we have to remember is we got a lot of projects now that are not 2 or 3 year projects, they're 4 or 5, 6 year projects that are going to branch over between these 2 strategic plans, and we can't forget those. They're super important, right? So bringing all that together is going to be an interesting challenge, and I look forward to working with the committee to do that. So, any questions on?
You were on the board last time we underwent this process. We had some outside facilitation help. Do we still envision doing that, or is this going to be more of a board? The board is running the process, kind of a thing.
I like the idea of doing that. I'd like to see over the course of the next few months how we go on this piece to see where that can help. I think part of that is going to be how deep we go in this list and where we may need outside help. I don't know. I mean, I'd be open to hearing what other people think about that.
So I'm
It's
not-
my decision, it's really.
I guess I'm more curious if that's sort of the formula for how we do it. We get a little bit, what the things that I remember from that process, other than the sort of the brainstorming sessions, was I felt like the facilitator helped us focus on a few key things when we had all these other ideas as well, which is helpful. So I don't know, I guess maybe it's a question for Joe. I don't know if there's a standard way to do it, if there's a preferred way to do it. It sounds like to me now we're maybe, as a board, more capable of doing it ourselves.
I think we've had some more experience, and I think what this gives us is a little bit better approach at understanding what do all our customers want first, right? And then being able to narrow that down and making sure that it matches up, not necessarily with what our current financial resources are. We're talking about a project that's gonna go out for 5 years, starting in 2025, right? So we had to find and fund those gaps, right? But I think we need to understand at least that general direction of what our economic environment is, all these other things that come into play. We had, when Joe and I were in at that meeting down in Charlotte that I alluded to, there was a lot of discussion about this process as well. And it seemed to be one of the bigger challenges, and one of the things that keeps coming up in any strategic plan process is don't get to the tactics before you figure out the picture. And it's really easy to get to the tactics quick. So we just gotta figure away from this. But don't forget them. I mean, you got ideas, put them down on a piece of paper, put them aside, bring the tactics in, we'll be figured out which way we're going.
I have a question, and Lynn one. This is for you perhaps. How does the foundation use the strategic plan for development?
Well, again, as I mentioned earlier, I think we're looking for direction from this group, right? It's like, I mean, the foundation board is ready and able to move forward when asked and get some acres. But I don't know if the foundation has a good picture of where we want with the museums. So I think that, would be not so clear, but it's probably that's nothing.
I think Brian and I successfully used the strategic plan to fire up the foundation to raise the funds, and then they ended up exceeding the fundraising for the Gina Adams Pavilion. And of course, we hit COVID. Unfortunately, we were able to be agile and use some other resources as two things. One, cost went up, but then B, that's when we learned that the stairs that were signed off by the state back in 2007 were actually never to code. And then they said, no, you got to change those now. So anyway, bottom line is it's all good. So I think that was a good example. And I do as he knows, my board report is really centered on the main meat of it, is centered on the 7 points, the 7 initiatives of our strategic plan. And I report that out to the foundation as well. So I think we've been responsive. I've got one other thing to add real quick. It's more admitting something. When we put together our first strategic plan, since I joined the team here, we had huge board input, a lot of help, participation, and everything like that. And that was a shorter term strategic plan. We never really had one before outside of the state strategic plan, which is the strategic plan. That's a different story. Then it came time to do the second one. And I'm not going to say that I felt abandoned, but it was kind of like, Joe, you handle it, right? So I kind of came up with a strategic plan, and I look back on it and I'm like, that's no good. I mean, it wasn't the best document ever, right? So I approached the foundation to hire a facilitator, a museum professional, to kind of hold your guys' feet to the fire. So that's the reason I did that. So I think
makes a lot more sense
to
see how the fire goes.
Yeah. So, but I see this board is now really engaged. The strategic planning committee is really engaged. Mark's doing a lot of homework and everything like that. And so, me personally, I am not pursuing the concept of hiring an outside facilitator. If we get to a point where we see one might be reasonable, maybe we don't need to go with one of these high price guys, right? Maybe we can get a local person, even from United Way or something. They're pretty good at that stuff. They don't have to be the museum person. They have to facilitate the discussion. And as Nathan alluded to then focus your attention on what's really important.
Yeah. I think the other piece which really complicates it, makes this one a much more difficult plan is we're gonna be in the middle of two facilities, right? Yeah. Well, we're envisioning a second facility and working to get to that second facility now. We're in this, we're gonna combine two facilities. So plus maybe, you know, a fully operational Douglas Avenue, right? So 3. So
As I tell the staff, if you're not growing, you're dying. If you don't stop moving, you can't die.
all right, so any other questions on that? If we're not, I'm gonna move on to Roberto for our last item. I thought I was the last item, I'm not. Roberto?
Thanks. As you saw in the meeting minutes from our initial meeting there, it was basically a grounding session where we walked through roles and responsibilities and some timelines on how we were going to go about doing the reaccreditation process. Good part here is it is a process. It's been vetted. It's been existed. Even though it has been updated since we first got our initial accreditation, there's been some runtime in there. So it's almost like, you know, bad analogy, but TurboTax. There's templates and responsibilities and things that we have to fill in the blanks. The board has got a role in looking through and oversight, but a lot of the yeoman's work obviously comes from the staff and filling out those templates and making the pitch. And then we get to step in and provide an extra set of eyes and provide extra input as needed. The linkage obviously does come into the strategic planning committee, and that is that one area and part of the documents that are looked at. The good part there, leveraging the discussion we had, is that you know, the process and AAM as an organization has how templates and examples from other museums that if we wanted to, we could look at. We will know what the judging criteria is like. So that adds an extra layer of help in our strategic plan and saying, well, let's keep these other guidelines in mind, since that is obviously one aspect of our operation that will be judged through the reaccreditation process. So it's kind of like taking a class, you know, what you're going to get graded on, and you better make sure your term paper looks like what the professor wanted, right? Other than that, it was pretty simple. We had a great session. Everybody's chipped in. It was a very active meeting. And, you know, at this point, it's a matter of getting those templates into staff and staff letting us know what kind of help they need from us in helping fill in the blanks. Did I miss anything, Joe?
No,
having you all as a committee is essentially peer reviewers, and certainly other board members can participate as well. That's going to make us, or it's going to put us in a position to move forward confidently.
Yeah, and that's going to be extra set of eyes. It's that old, you know, you got to eat your own dog food mantra. Staff will go through it, our committee will go through it. We'll probably share it with everybody just to make sure that if anything, you know, we've missed kind of pops in all your different backgrounds and concerns, and we put forth a good term paper.
Great. Any questions for Roberto on reaccreditation? Okay, so any other business, any other announcements from the group?
I think it was already announced the next board meeting is February 10th. And as we discussed yesterday, we're not going to have a special meeting or anything in Richmond, but we will pick strategically a day where staff and hopefully some board members will go to the new General Assembly building and pass out our updates and so forth and have a few conversations. And related to that, of course, is we learn more about the formation of committees and their composition and where we sit with our capital fund request in the General Assembly. That will be handled separately based upon committee schedules.
Great. Okay, thanks to everyone here, and thanks to the staff for helping us to get through this today and making sure everything works and all these reports get put out, and taking them off on their Saturdays and coming up here. Appreciate all that. Mary Zell, we hope you get better. If you're still on the line, hope you get well soon. And thank you to everyone. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
That's it.